All right, this is Bobby Harris, the Executive Director of the Utility Broadband Alliance. As you are all getting logged in to our webinar today, we want to thank you for being part of this. We want to also remind you that you are all muted. I'm sure you heard the lady say that, but use the questions tab and type your questions in. We'll try to save time at the end to get to all your questions. If for some reason we don't, we will follow up with you on those. I'm going to pause just a moment and make sure everything on the recording is going well. So pardon me just a second. Make sure we've got everything recording. Everything looks good. Okay. Well, as I said, I'm Bobby Harris from UBBA, and we're honored to have the third in a series of Ericsson webinars. They've been so kind to share great knowledge with us so far, and it's my honor to turn it over to Elisario from Ericsson, the Chief Technology Officer and Business Development from Ericsson, and I'm going to just go on mute. Elisario, the show is yours.
Hi, great to join us in our webinar today, and we will address how innovative device ecosystem is enabling the end-to-end use case for utilities. I am Elisiário Cunha, VP, Chief CTO on Business Development Customer here in North America. And I'm happy here to lead this webinar with 3 strategic partners. And today we have with us Ian, CEO at Ubiquiti. Thank you, Ian, to join us today. We have also Amir Mahmoud. He's Head of Technology Advantage and Partnership at Cradlepoint. Amir.
Hello.
And Andy Germano, Vice President at BEC Technology. Thank you. So we are working together in the importance, showing the importance of the utilities now for our business, showing we like to go in our panel today, and we're going to explore different use cases, different capabilities that the device ecosystem is allow us on the utilities market. Very, very interesting. Let's go to the next slide. Mission critical communication for utilities. So as Ericsson, we are addressing end-to-end technology with a wide range of use case for utilities, including smart grid, remote monitoring. We from dedicated network to commercial mobile network. We are using our 3GPP IT leadership and critical business capabilities and to deliver mission critical mobile communication solutions for utilities, enabling a future-proof, high security, high reliable, and resilient cellular connectivity. And we are working together. We are working together with the device partners to help the utilities on the transition from the legacy towards the future of the private network. We are very excited time with low latency, more security, and more throughput. And now let's get the latest information from the device ecosystem for utilities. And first I'd like to invite Ian, CEO from Ubiquiti, to talk how Ubiquiti is making utilities smarter, safer, and more connected. Ian, I'd like to hand over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Elisario. It's great to be on this webinar and great to be part of the device ecosystem, especially as we see utilities starting to migrate from legacy ISM band mesh to both public and private LTE. It's clearly an exciting time for us. If you could go to the next slide. So as Elisario said, I'm Ian Aaron. I'm the CEO of Ubiquiti. And at Ubiquiti, we focus on delivering intelligent infrastructure platforms for cities of all sizes, with the focus on making cities smarter, safer, and more connected. And we do that in 3 product segments. One is our smart city, which is all around smart lighting and how we help cities and utilities save money and be more proactive around O&M support and O&M savings, public safety, and even air quality. On the connectivity side, it's all about expanding public broadband and helping the carriers drive 5G and densify 5G. And on the smart grid, it's all about managing and monitoring the distribution network, which encompasses both utility poles and transformers. If you could go to the next. So we, in collaboration actually with Florida Power and Light, who's considered really innovators in the smart grid space, we developed some very unique products that allow for the first time real-time monitoring of the distribution network focused on distribution transformers. And not only have we created some very unique sensors to monitor power output, the efficiency of transformers, oil level and temperature, tilt and vibration, but this data becomes incredibly valuable when you can leverage an LTE network to deliver this data, which is on a lower latency level to help manage and detect problems well ahead of time. We pride ourselves on everything that we do on being very simple to install. These products install on existing distribution transformers in 15 minutes. We're also working very closely with the distribution transformer manufacturers and how this gets integrated into the manufacturing process to be delivered to the utilities directly versus retrofit. Tremendous O&M benefits in this, in that it also ties in with GIS data, which is default in what you get with both public and private LTE modems. It allows us, as I mentioned, lower latency. So we're delivering information well before problems happen and allow the utilities to respond versus having to react and be able to monitor their distribution network more closely. Once again, because we're LTE based and part of the Ericsson ecosystem, we can go up on the public network, and as utilities decide to deploy in areas private LTE, we can over the air convert these devices from one network to the other, eliminating having to go back up on the pole. If we go to the next. We also have products for actually monitoring the poles, as you can see from the lower right-hand picture, monitoring things like tilt and vibration. Our devices, which once again run on very low latency IoT networks from the public carriers, can also run on private LTE, but can even detect things like line galloping, which are some of the precursors to things that cause sparks and fires. So this is about real-time monitoring of the assets and being able to do this at scale and leverage the Ericsson ecosystem and public and private networks to do that. In addition, our core products, which are around lighting, it's about saving nowadays energy, and our street light controls save between 20 to 40% in energy from even traditional street lights, because you can dim, you can meter the power, and give real-time asset management around tilt and vibration and power theft, et cetera. So it's the LTE network that's allowing us to really drive these types of services for utilities and cities globally. And then finally, on the next slide, what LTE also provides us is the ability to go from both narrowband to broadband, and things that you just can't do on ISM band mesh networks today. So this is an example of what we're doing, a product that plugs in seconds and allows us to do video and audio edge AI for traffic management, and for pedestrian safety, but we're also using these for this capability and edge AI for the utility industry for monitoring substations. So being able to monitor sparks, being able to monitor intrusion, and being able to leverage the public and private network for doing that. So really exciting what this device ecosystem opens up, and look forward to participating and answering any further questions as we get into the panel. Thanks, Elisario.
Thank you very much. I am great presentation. I really like how innovative Ubiquiti bring to the markets, bring to the activities a different new use case. Very, very innovative. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite Ami Mahmood from Cradlepoint to talk about private cellular network for utilities.
Thank you, Elisario, and thanks for having me on the panel. Really excited to be sharing some of the information from Cradlepoint's standpoint. Again, as Elisario introduced at the top of the webinar, my name is Amir Mahmood. I lead the technology alliances and partnerships for private networks at Cradlepoint. And today, what I'm going to do is spend the next few minutes. I'll try to give you a quick overview of Cradlepoint, because I'm pretty sure some of the folks on this call, on this session, don't know too much about Cradlepoint. So I'll talk a little bit about Cradlepoint and our portfolio, and then I'll touch upon some of the use cases that we see are really critical that Cradlepoint is able to address with our portfolio of products that we have. So with that introduction, let's so thanks for flipping the slide there. So Cradlepoint was founded in 2006. We have over 28,000 active customers across 50 countries. We were actually acquired by Ericsson, so we are wholly owned by Ericsson, but we are still independently operated. We still sell our products under the Cradlepoint brand, and we work with the wider ecosystem of partners that are enabling private networks and other use cases for the utilities, oil and gas, and other verticals. We have 1.6 million plus endpoints under subscription, and we are, I hope, considered the worldwide leader in LTE-enabled and now 5G enterprise wireless WAN networks. Just a few stats, as you see on the bottom, 40% of the Fortune 500 and 50% of the Fortune 100 companies use our products in one form or another. We have a lot of customers in the transportation vertical as well. And we are really strong in public safety and public sector. As you can see, all the top 25 US cities are our customers. They are using our devices in police vehicles, in ambulances, in fire trucks, etc. So we are very well penetrated in the public sector, but we also work very closely with the utilities, and I'll share some of that information in the next few slides. So if you can go to the next slide, Elisario. This is a quick snapshot of our product positioning. The key here that I want to highlight, the key point that I want to highlight here is that we sell our service on a subscription basis. We just don't sell the endpoints, right? So we touch different domains, different swim lanes, fixed, mobile, IoT, private networks, and we have different products in each one of those swim lanes, but we sell our products under the Net Cloud service subscription. So the hardware just comes as part of the subscription, but we really kind of, look at us as a hardware as a service company, where we are providing the intelligence that we have built in Net Cloud, which is built on the Net Cloud OS, and it comes with a management platform that really allows, again, the enterprise customers in different verticals like the utilities and the that we are addressing today, to have to bring simplicity to the management of UEs that they are deploying for different use cases, for different network transformation that they're going through. So just to give you some examples, our mobile networks portfolio is really robust. As I said, we're very strong in public sector and utilities, and we are FirstNet certified. Most of our devices are FirstNet certified. We have a clear path to 5G, and we support multiple modems on the same device to bring seamless failover and redundancy. For fixed site resiliency, we provide our routers to a lot of retail customers. So, for example, Starbucks uses us for failover and redundancy as well. They also, a lot of our customers use us for out-of-band management to do remote troubleshooting of their primary router that they might have at their location. So, for example, for the utilities, if you have a router, a Cisco router, which is the primary router, and it fails, we can provide out-of-band management and access to that router so that you don't have to roll a truck and spend, almost $1,000 in troubleshooting to figure out what is happening with the connectivity of that router. So there are, different things that we do that we think really differentiates our solution in the market. So, Alistair, if you can go to the next slide. So here I'm going to address a little bit of the trends that are driving the network transformation at the utilities. The audience on this call can appreciate the utilities obviously operate a very complicated infrastructure of assets, right? And there are three trends that are really impacting the utilities as they're looking at modernizing their grid and going through modernizing their networks. The first one is obviously decarbonization for cleaner environment. Then we have decentralization of energy generation and consumption. But what is really relevant to this discussion here is the whole digital transformation that is taking place, what some people like to call the fourth industrial revolution. Now, from the utility standpoint, what it really means is that the utilities are are in the process of automating their IT/OT operations. They are making sure that they have the right controls to address cybersecurity and the right processes and systems in place to ensure employee safety. And all of those drivers in turn are really tied to the economic and competitive, strategic and tactical considerations that a lot of the executives have in the utilities vertical, which is really tied to making their enterprises more agile with advanced operations. For example, right, the utilities want to make sure that they can more efficiently do monitoring of the transmission lines of the grid, for example, using drones, make their employees more productive with the technologies of mission critical push to talk or push to video, right? Also, video surveillance is really critical. But all of those things, all of these use cases require reliable connectivity. Wireline connectivity there for a part of the infrastructure, but for a lot of these use cases, really having reliable connectivity, wireless connectivity is really important. And the technologies that sit behind that are tied to these goals that the utilities have to address the whole digital transformation efforts are all tied to having a good mobile edge strategy, having connectivity to secure connectivity to the cloud, utilizing AI for IoT, and then really implementing these dedicated networks that we are addressing today, also on this session to streamline all the operations, IT or OT operations. So with that context, I think I just want to highlight how we kind of understand the market and the needs of the utility customers, and the products that we have really build upon these technologies like the cloud, AI, mobile edge, IoT, and we are really getting really active in enabling dedicated networks with our endpoints, gateways, routers, as well as some of the adapters that we have now for 5G. And all those technologies are helping the utilities address these use cases. I think I'm just going to fly through some of the next slides because I think I'm going to run out of time. So as I said earlier, again, we are enabling a lot of branch use cases. So day one connectivity or temporary networks that the utilities might have as they're constructing a new facility, for example. It's hard to get places with wireline connectivity. Our UEs and routers can go into those environments and provide you the connectivity on day one. Out of band management I touched earlier, which also provides access to your other networking infrastructure and allows you to save costs. And also work from home, right? So a lot of the employees these days are working from home due to COVID. There's a work from anywhere trend, and we have some devices in our portfolio that address their need as well. Next slide. Then here you see a few IoT use cases that are very much tied to the dedicated networks, private LTE or private 5G. But we enable digital signage for a lot of customers in different verticals. Even the utilities are probably going to start putting some, using some digital signage in their environments. Security monitoring in a box, SCADA, obviously, those systems that are really critical to some of the utilities, as well as the new private networks that are now emerging to enable a lot of the use cases I just mentioned earlier around video surveillance, IoT, sensors that you need to get that you need to hook up to collect all kinds of data. So our products are really addressing all the key use cases that are tied to IoT and private networks. Next slide. This one is hopefully very relevant to the utilities customers as well. As I said earlier, we have a lot of very big transportation customers in our portfolio. But for the utilities, we provide our products for their mobile fleet management, for their trucks, because those trucks are now sophisticated remote offices, and they have a need to connect a lot of things in those trucks. And our ruggedized purpose-built routers and devices can enable that workforce, those trucks that they're driving around every day, with a lot of with the right level of reliable and secure connectivity, so that they can be productive and efficient throughout their day. Next slide. Again, a quick, I'm not going to go through this slide, obviously, but as you can see, we have a lot of the use cases highlighted on the left-hand side. We are supporting a lot of CBRS deployments. We support 600 megahertz band 71 band. We are looking at 900 megahertz as well. But we have a full portfolio of devices that touch different use cases that I mentioned earlier. Next slide. This is my last slide here, but it basically summarizes what I just talked about. Again, our value proposition is very much tied to our management platform that helps you deploy, manage, and monitor more efficiently with simplicity. The platform also allows our customers to do API development, create containers to enable other applications that you might be using to go through the digital transformation that you are considering right now. And we work with the whole ecosystem of partners to make sure that we are connecting all the devices that need to be connected on a reliable wireless network. And we have obviously close partnership with Ericsson because they are our parent company. So that's kind of my content, and I'm looking forward to fielding some questions later on in the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, Thank
you very much. Thank you, Amir. Thank you very much for your presentation, showing the huge portfolio on device and allowing different use cases. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite Andy Germano from BCE to address 4G, LTE, and 5G in our industrial device. Andy, I'd like to hand over to you.
Great. Thank you, Elisario. Yes, so a little bit about BEC. Started since 1970, serving power and utility industry. BEC standing for Billion Electric Corporation. So we have a lot of experience in AMI, smart grid, smart energy type products, and most recently and focus here in the U.S. on LTE router solutions. Specifically for internet service providers, Internet of Things, as well as utility type applications. So yeah, if you go to the next slide, I have a couple of slides in here as well. Just looking at three areas. First aspect is at the power generation. So we do have small IoT type LTE router products that can be used to monitor some of the different equipment. It's ruggedized solutions with the LTE technology inside, as well as Class 1 Div 2 certification. So some of the benefits would be the quality of service, reliability, security, and standards aspect of these LTE type devices. And two of the main applications I'll talk about on the distribution side we'll go into some additional details. If you go to the next slide. Two main applications that we're looking at with the BEC products today for this aspect are the what they call the flitzer, sorry, fault location isolation and service restoration, which basically when you have your grid operations, there's a fault in the grid. LTE is a very rapid technology and cost effective in terms of being able to identify where these faults may occur and then isolate the faults to a smaller population of users versus prior to this type of capability may have a larger area impacted by a specific network fault. So with the rapid communication between the LTE system and the devices in the network, everything from the capacitors, the control systems that may be in the network. It allows you to identify the fault, isolate the fault, and then limit the fault, and then restore once the condition is restored to go back to the original configuration. So these devices can be located on the recloser type devices in the network, as well as some of the other voltage regulators, capacitors, etc. The other application that we're looking at would be for what they call Volt. Volt is used now to isolate power delivery to factories, hospitals, schools, and even residents, where the voltage regulators are controlled using the LTE wireless network to have more of a real-time control of the power distribution systems. So it allows you to have more control over the amount of power that you will be delivering. So there could be a higher demand at, say, a hospital at a given moment in time, and you want to be able to balance and regulate that power, but then not waste it in that direction when it's not needed. So the Volt system, in conjunction with the LTE router endpoints, allows you to have that additional optimization and efficiency control. So those were two of the main areas that I was going to talk about today. I think there's one more slide in there. This just looks at the BEC family of products on the right-hand side and how they fit in with the different aspects of the power grid. So we've got on the upper left the outdoor products, everything from high-powered Wi-Fi to the long-range LTE connectivity solutions, and then we also have the IoT, which are more of an indoor device, and those can be used outdoors in an enclosure type of an environment. So the outdoor units are ruggedized and standalone. They have generally a power over Ethernet connection is the only thing they need to power it up. It has the antennas integrated and built in. And then the IoT form factors, which are the two little black boxes in the middle right, those would generally be used indoors with the generation equipment, or in an outdoor environment can be used in an enclosure type of, as you see on the far upper right. That was just a brief overview, Elisario. I just want to cover some of the aspects, use cases, and products from BEC.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you very much, Andy. Great presentation. Very good, very interesting slides and huge portfolio. Thank you again for joining us today. Now we have some questions, and let's see if we have some questions from the audience. If no, I can start with some questions here. First, yes, we have some questions.
We can go to one from the audience that came in if you'd like, Elisario, if you prefer.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
let's do this question. So how would you approach the migration of mission critical coverage from service providers to private networks? I think that's open to all of you.
I can take a first, stab at that. So yes, we've been working with the utility industry for many years, and in general, with most of the utilities we've worked with, private networks are preferred. So this is a very exciting time in the industry because previously the amount of spectrum availability was more narrow band, whereas now with LTE band 48, CBRS, including the priority access license, as well as what we call the utility band, which is LTE band 8, with the utility added on there, gives a lot more spectrum availability for these private networks where we can build out high availability, reliable type networks, and not necessarily have to compete with public networks. Public networks are a great option. Just as an example, some of the BEC and Cradlepoint devices have what they call dual SIM capabilities, so you can have 2 SIM cards in there, and then you can operate on the private network when you're in your private network coverage. But then if you're in an area where you may not have your private network coverage, you can roam onto the public network. So, certainly the conjunction of private and public networks can be used to increase reliability and availability, as well as coverage of the networks.
Yeah, and Andy's BEC and I come from Cradlepoint. We play in the same space, obviously, but I completely agree what Andy just said. There are a lot more options available now, and also as I spoke about digital transformation and all the requirements that the utilities have to monitor these these devices, a lot of devices that are being put out, the Wi-Fi networks as well as the public networks, they're not going to cut it in the future. So there would be a need, obviously, for these dedicated networks that can provide the reliability, the security that is always required, and the application that you might be running to better monitor, manage the infrastructure that you're putting in to streamline your operation. So the wireless connectivity becomes reliable, secure, reliable connectivity becomes paramount.
So, Elisario, we do things to really address 2 concerns and interests for utilities. The first one is when we deal with a transformer that has a 20-year life or a street light with a 10-year life, they're looking at long-term agreements with the carriers. And what's nice about what we do and the modems that we use in our devices, we actually can do firmware updates from, as an example, release 13 to release 16. So a device can be, on the LTE network for the next 10 years, but also can run on a dual path as those networks upgrade from 4G to 5G. So, getting that 20-year visibility on the device. In addition, we support an embedded eSIM, and our modems are global modems that support, as Andy said, band 8. So as the utilities start looking at converting over in different areas into private LTE, we actually can over the air convert that device, as an example, a distribution transformer monitor or a street light control. We can actually convert that from the public network to the private network all over the air. And while when you think about a utility, their whole goal is how do they reduce O&M costs? And every time you have to have a trip to a pole, that's an O&M cost. So we're very focused on how our technology and how we've implemented the LTE ecosystem to make sure that we minimize those second trips and that O&M expense.
Very good, excellent, very good. Thank you all of you for your comment, clarification. Now I have some questions. I'd like to start with Andy. And Andy, we talk about LTE now, and why do you think that LTE is ideal for the utility use case? What are the main use case that you can highlight to us using?
Yes, that's a great question, Elisario. I think the main reason why we're looking at LTE technology that's ideal for utility use cases, number one, as came up a couple times in the presentations already, it's very secure technology. It's extremely reliable. It has very low latency for real-time data transmissions, which is one of the reasons why it can be used for the Flitzer, application, as well as the Volt type application that I talked about. And then it has a very large ecosystem. There's many players in the ecosystem, all the way from the chips and the software through the infrastructure, radio access network, as well as the endpoints. And with that large of an ecosystem drives the cost down, so it becomes a very cost-effective solution, as well as highly secure, reliable, and low latency capability.
Okay, very good. I'd like to ask Ian about, you mentioned in your presentation, but I'd like to explore more. You mentioned that the distribution device sensors has been integrated now on the distribution transformers factories, and they leave the factory already field, shipped to the field. So can you expand more on that?
Correct, and this was really, once again, driven by the collaboration that we've been doing with Florida Power and Light. But there has been distribution transformer monitoring. There's been Rogowski coils out there for years. The issue has really been now, how do you do this at scale? And part of the aspect of scale has to do with the network, right? Instead of an ISM band mesh network where you got to build out concentrators, and you have to make sure you have enough mesh to handle the communications. And when you get large scale mesh networks, you could be 15 to 30 minutes for a round trip message. When you're dealing with critical infrastructure and a transformer that has an issue, you need to respond more quickly. So we're now getting to a point with the LTE and device and modem ecosystem where we can be much more responsive and low latency. The next aspect of scale is how these sensors get more integrated into the embedded distribution transformer ecosystem. And this is now something, it's very common when utilities will order a transformer, they'll order it with their specifications or their requirements, and there may be little nuances. But we're now starting to work with some of the leading transformer manufacturers to integrate this technology in the tank to make it very simple for the utilities and for the maintenance crews to, when they replace a transformer, to have it fully integrated. And this, in turn, that level of integration reduces costs, and that level of integration allows us to really scale.
Amazing, very good. Simplify the process. That is amazing.
Based on what's happened with situations in California and Texas, there could be initiatives around mandating in certain situations this kind of monitoring. So we think it's a very exciting area for the utility industry and provides some incredible data back on to the manufacturers on transformer efficiency, to the utilities on reliability and maintenance queues, so and reducing O&M costs. So we think this is a very exciting area.
Excellent, very good. I'd like to have a question for you on the different how Cradlepoint is supporting utilities to improve the connectivity to the workforce and also to guarantee secure the fleet management. I think those are we have a very interesting use case, and I'd like to understand how Cradlepoint is help address this use case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the use cases that the utility fleets have for their drivers and their technicians who are out in the field, they're very similar to the use cases that obviously we see with the first responders as well, right? As I noted in my presentation earlier, we have been providing ruggedized, purpose-built devices and solutions to the transportation and public safety for a very long time. And in the utilities segment as well, we claim 3 out of the top 5 utility companies in the US are already our active customers, Cradlepoint customers. But as far as what we do, again, as I said, these vehicles that have become sophisticated remote offices for the drivers, for the technicians, and there are so many things that need to be connected, and we need to make sure that they have reliable and secure connectivity in their trucks. Whether it's monitoring distracted drivers, connecting cameras and their maybe tablets in the cars in their trucks that they have. Also connecting maybe drones that they are kind of carrying around to inspect the transmission lines when they get to the transmission lines, to monitor. All of that is tied to having that reliable wireless connectivity over LTE or 5G, and that in turn, when you have that, impacts the cost and the operational overhead that all the utilities obviously want to avoid. So very much tied to that need, all the devices that we currently provide. Again, we're also FirstNet certified, as I said, so that could be a fallback. You have multiple SIMs, as Andy said, in BEC's portfolio, but also Cradlepoint has the same approach where you have redundancy, right, in the devices. So the drivers and the technicians who are out there are never without reliable connectivity.
Okay, very good. You have more questions from the audience, Bobby?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we do. And one I'll just answer myself says, yes, we will not only be recording this and make the recording available, but we'll be able to, I'm sure, share the slides in a PDF format. So I'll answer that one for the audience that asked that. But here's a question. I believe you touched on it a little bit, but clearly it's important. And I'm really combining two questions into one because we talk about this quite a lot. So how quickly, and we're talking about driving use cases, but how quickly do you believe the device ecosystem will grow and start supporting the Anterix 900 megahertz spectrum or be considered certified on the Band 8 9i?
So I can maybe just start with that. Every single one of our products, whether it's the street light control, utility pole monitoring, distribution transformer, all support that today. And the beautiful thing of what we've done kind of working with the modem manufacturers is that the Anterix has a little different channel mapping on Band 8 than traditional 900 megahertz LTE, and it's just an over-the-air firmware update. So those are things in which we're involved with pilots today in being able to demonstrate from the public to the private, but that in the modem technology exists today.
Excellent, Ian. Thank you. Any other comments from
Yeah, from BEC
Andy?
perspective,
Yeah.
we're seeing the same. There's a lot of activity in the chips and module space. We're in testing interoperability currently, so we expect this band to be supported relatively quickly over the next few months as well.
And I think what really, speaking to what Amir and Andy were saying, it's an incredibly exciting time for the device ecosystem for utilities. Before, it was really focused on having to build and manage networks before you could put the first device on. What's nice about leveraging the LTE and the private LTE networks is we can focus on innovation around the devices and leverage the network, which is, and one important thing is happening with these networks. When you go with ISM band mesh and legacy networks, over time, the O&M cost goes up. Whereas when you take a look at LTE and private LTE, over time, especially on public networks, the cost for bandwidth has gone down. So we're now at a point with all of the industrial IoT capabilities within LTE and private LTE, where we can really now start focusing on driving even more innovation on hardening the grid, on the device ecosystem. So it's getting to be a really exciting time for the utility sector.
Yeah, and a lot of the intelligence, as we all know, is being pushed to the edge. The edge compute trend that we all see. There's obviously, as Ian said, there's exponential innovation that is going to happen over the next few years, right? Because a lot of the applications would be deployed that would be again on the edge to harness the power of the data that is being generated, right, by the sensors and IoT devices, for example, that the utilities would have in their environment, and that would lead to, a very targeted decision making on events, on the business, overall from a strategic standpoint, because there will be so much data available from these devices. So the device ecosystem is evolving to accommodate all of those trends. Cradlepoint is working hard to make sure that we can have containers, for example, on our devices for some of the other applications that are being used. So the adjacencies are also being addressed in addition to the core functionality that these devices provide.
Excellent. Thank you.
Very
Those are
good.
great answers. Go ahead, Elisario.
Yes, I like to go more deep on the private networks, and I like to explore more. We have more minutes here, and this is a question to everybody. We see that the utilities are embracing private network and building their own network and increase their network control and also security, as I mentioned before. And I'd like to each one of you explore more how the device ecosystem is supporting this new reality. So because this is happening now, this happening, we see this movement in many utilities, and I'd like to explore more with each one of you.
Well, maybe I'll just start. Historically, when you looked at smart grid or AMI, everything was very narrow band, and latency wasn't an issue because it was really about storing and reporting. And now when you take a look at whether it's a substation or a vault, transmission lines, you're seeing both use cases of both narrowband and broadband, where they want to monitor video for tree, for foliage, and they want to be able to, do various things on the narrowband. The difference is on both of those use cases, they're looking at very low latency, where they want to be more responsive. So, these networks are allowing, both the kind of expansion and scaling of narrowband, the integration of broadband, and doing all of this with low latency, which is, I think, opening up a whole, array of new devices and opportunities within the hardening the grid.
Very good. And me, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, from Cradlepoint standpoint, again, we have embedded security in our devices, but we also work with a larger ecosystem of partners in the security space. We have a partnership, for example, with Palo Alto Networks, Zscaler. So we are working with the larger ecosystem to make sure that, wherever our customers are going to go as far as their security needs to address cybersecurity, we are going to go along with them. So I'll just leave it to that. But yeah, we have a robust ecosystem, and organically, we are supporting security as well.
Yeah, I was going to say spectrum, coverage, and capacity are three key factors for device considerations for these private networks. And utilities need purpose-built devices that will fit in with the use case that we've been talking about, but also an ecosystem that supports those use cases, as well as security. Security is highly important for private networks, and we need to make sure that we protect these networks from any kind of cyber threats. The devices themselves need to be ruggedized, highly reliable, and highly secure, with flexible interfaces such as serial, RS-232, Ethernet, sometimes Wi-Fi, other interfaces for sensor management. The form factors need to be compact, easy to mount, high antenna performance for gain, coverage, and distance, as well as remote monitoring and management capability. So that's some of the key aspects that we're looking at for these types of devices.
Excellent, very good. I'd like to explore another topic that is about pricing and the device ecosystem price. How do you see the pricing evolve in the next years? So how do you see possibilities or trends that you have economy of scales to reduce the device ecosystem price in the next years? If you can explore more on that.
You know, when we look at price, we look at two aspects. We look at the network costs and we look at the hardware and integration costs. And what we've seen just over the past 4 years, which is a traditional trend in you know, mobile connectivity, your cost for cellular connection may have stayed the same, but you've received 4 or 5 times the amount of capacity for that same cost. So your cost per megabyte has been, you know, declining rapidly, and we've seen that. And that has all of a sudden gotten to a point where managing your own network versus the existing public and private networks are becoming more cost effective than the legacy, you know, ISM band mesh. That's one aspect. The other thing we've seen in just the overall IoT ecosystem, modems 4 years ago that were $15, $17 are now $4 or $5. So as this scales, the BOM of these devices, the bill of materials, is starting to really decrease, which means, you know, that utilities of all sizes, you know, the municipal utilities, the co-ops, the IOUs of all sizes can start deploying these devices. The other thing we're seeing, and this just gets back into the integration, the tighter that these devices get integrated with existing infrastructure providers, whether it's transformer, whether it's utility pole, whether it's, you know, different aspects of the grid, the tighter that gets integrated, the lower the cost. So I think, you know, the floodgates have started to open on both sides, and we're starting to see, you know, costs get to a point where utilities can really look at scaling.
Yeah, and then that's great. And the things I would add to that are, you know, the use of LTE has really come down the cost curves, you know, already. So we're really getting to ride the cost curves of you know, millions and millions of devices, which really helps keep the cost down in this technology. Even though it may be a little bit different, we're using a little bit different bands in the frequency side. A lot of the economies of scale are there in the you know, all the bill of materials components like the filters and oscillators and other things that come into play. So we really get a huge benefit of the reliability, security, and cost curve. But the thing I really wanted to mention was the thing Ian touched on earlier is really the life cycle cost. You know, a lot of times with the devices that BEC manufactures, the cost of a truck roll is greater than the cost of the equipment itself. So we put a lot of focus on the ability to remotely manage these devices, similar to, you know, what Ian was talking about earlier, to be able to remotely upgrade, remotely monitor, analyze, and do as many things as possible without having to send a person to site. So, you know, lifecycle management costs are certainly key and something to keep a keen eye on as looking at, you know, different options.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Andy, Ian, and Nami. I'd like to wrap up here and thank you all for joining us in our webinar today. We hope that it will be useful for you, get the latest from the utilities, partners, device vendors here, sharing different experience, different use case, different capabilities, new capabilities that will allow us to bring utilities the latest technology and then enable different use case. I'm happy that you joined us today, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisario, for hosting us.
Thank you, Elisario, Andy, Amir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, and Andy.
Thank you all very much from UVBA also. We will be publishing the recording of this webinar so anyone who can watch it on demand on the UVBA.com website. And your knowledge sharing is exactly what UVBA is all about. We thank you so much for your time and we wish you a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.